Hello, hello, and happy Wednesday, deities. Hope everyone has been having a great week so far. Welcome to another edition of Titan Talk. I'm Isiah. Kilgoon not joining us today. He had some stuff going on that he unfortunately needed to be out for the day. But I've got Clumsy with us, and we decided to bring on Travis because we've got some exciting stuff to talk about.
I'll try to fill for Kilgoon.
Yeah. Travis is going to be joining us for a little bit. I know, right? Where's your Alani? Oh, I didn't brief him before the show. I'm sorry. It's already...
We have like the briefcase of Alani. It's like, please choose
one. Choose one. Sweet. Well, we talked about our big OB10 reveal on Monday. We showed off Apollo, talked about 5 new items coming to the battleground, a lot of stuff. We're going to be going over the full balance patch notes a little bit later on in the show, but Travis is on because we want to talk a little bit about, some of the upcoming gods coming to SMITE too. And we've been making some changes to the schedule. We've been doing some planning. We've been looking a lot at player feedback. So Travis, I'll pass it along to you and you can kind of kick us off there.
Yeah, I remember, in January we teased the H God was coming soon.
Yeah.
And we've been looking at the schedule, trying to figure out like the right time to release them. And the H God, I said him.
The
H God, it arrives when the H God decides to arrive.
Yeah, it's true.
So unfortunately, we're here to talk a little bit about that. We are going to be shifting the H God out in the schedule a little bit, and there's a few reasons why we think that that's a good idea to shift him specifically. The main one is that we're looking at the feedback and we're seeing players constantly wanting still some of the classic gods from SMITE 1, the bangers, the big hitters, that are just missing. And so we wanted to make sure that we were prioritizing those. As the last couple of god releases went, we saw that they do bring in players and engagement, but really just missing your favorite gods from SMITE 1 is still what we see as
I
the
see
biggest
it on Reddit
opportunity
every day.
to get more players. Yes.
I'm waiting for X God to come before I hop into SMITE 2. So we definitely want to take a look at some of those really big hitters, like you said, and prioritize those for coming to the
absolutely.
To the
game. Like, I don't even know what Travis like prefacing. Like, I want to say things real quick. It's like, I'm gonna wait. I don't know exactly what he's gonna say. So.
Yeah, and what we're looking at is to make sure that when we do bring in one of these new gods to the game, that we're prioritizing, a whole update that's really dedicated towards highlighting that character. So, and some of the past new gods that we've released, it hasn't gone like incredibly well in bringing players in. But the bringing classic ones back has actually done a really good job of that. So we want to make sure that those new gods, when we release them, have a bigger update.
Have a bigger update, a bigger moment. We can do some more fun stuff around social media to really make it kind of an event, right?
Yeah.
It's not just, a brand new god's coming to SMITE 2. It's a brand new god is coming to SMITE 2, and there's a lot of other cool stuff around it, right?
Yeah, that's right. And, just like I teased the H God coming, around this time, I'm also here to say that the next new god is now not an H God.
There we go.
Oh, okay, sure.
And and I
don't give him another letter. Don't give him another letter.
It's not an H, but it is another letter.
Yeah.
So it's not H God.
It's not an H. Yeah. So have fun with that.
Well, if it's not the H God after Apollo, who is it, Travis?
Yeah. So some real bangers are coming up. I think that are really some of the key gods that people are really missing. So next up, so we're releasing Apollo on the
Monday.
19th, so Monday, and then 2 weeks from there, where we're gonna
the monster's coming to SMITE 2.
Yeah, she's a monster. I've been playtesting her during dev.
She's feeling pretty good.
Yeah, she's probably OP, so you guys
her plus ones
that.
are pretty cool.
Yeah, her plus ones are really cool. And then after that, we're going to be releasing Ganesh.
Yes, my favorite guardian from SMITE 1.
Yeah.
I'm super excited for the God of Success.
Yeah, except he's just mega silent. And, man, I get frustrated. So it is cool, these aspects. Like you see if you get counterpicked or whatever with Ganesh, and you're like an ability like carry or something like that, and being able to potentially change your builds or change your aspect to now maybe do basic attack focus or something like that is been pretty cool to pivot your gameplay
until Ganesha pivots. But
until Ganesh pivots, and then what are you gonna do? So those two are coming up today. later today, we are going to have a flash test after,
Yeah, and that's
today.
just going to have the OB10 and Apollo.
That's right, OB10 and Apollo. But we are trying to have a flash test tomorrow as kind of a, like, our bad on the H-God not being next. But here's some exciting stuff. We're going to try to have a flash test tomorrow with Scylla and Ganesh in there.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
I don't know if I
can be
knew
pretty
that.
hype.
That's okay.
That could be pretty hype. Get those out there. They're not done.
Yeah.
But they are fully playable, and we give people a chance to play them early, but then also maybe they can help us identify some issues.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sweet. Well, those are the only two that we're going to talk about. I know traditionally in the past we've done the full Kilgoon PowerPoint. Sorry, we don't. Kilgoon's not here.
Yeah, is that right?
We don't have the fancy PowerPoint, but we did want to just take some time and talk about just the next couple in the pipeline, and then as we continue to work, as we continue to plan, as we get closer to Ganesh, we'll talk about the next couple after Ganesh. So.
Yep.
It should be really exciting. I'm looking forward for people to get their first look at Scylla and Ganesh, hopefully in a flash test later this week. That's breaking news, which is really exciting. So it's going to be
as Travis
super
was saying,
cool.
note for the air, if we do have Scylla in the flash test, and she's using completely temp design effects right now, and some early on sound
Got a
effects.
Vulcan bomb in there. Yeah.
So just there's some work to be done, but she'll be ready.
Nice, sweet. Well, that is pretty much it for the God release kind of. It's not necessarily a roadmap, but it's just us coming in front of you talking about the next couple gods coming to Smite 2. Travis, if you want to dip out, you're more than welcome to. If you want to hang out, you can as well. I know you're a busy guy. You wanted to come on and talk about the God release stuff since Kilgoon wasn't here.
Yeah, for sure. And now I can just go back to my desk and watch the show.
Yeah.
Instead of being a part of it. Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, guys. I'm looking forward to flash test tomorrow and seeing what we're going to get.
Flash
out of
test
Scylla
today
and
with
Ganesh,
Apollo
and then Apollo today.
Yeah.
Are the new items going to be?
Yeah, the new items are going to be in. All the balance that we're going to talk about today will be in the flash test today as well. So lots of stuff.
Can't wait. All right, cool. Peace, y'all.
Peace.
Sweet.
Everyone
Appreciate
say
you,
bye to
Travis.
Travis.
Bye.
Thanks so much for coming on. I will bring us to the handy dandy laptop, and I'll hide the cameras to give Travis a little bit of time to get out of the room
before I
and get
squished
back
your
to
head.
work. Yeah, squish the head. So Clumsy, open beta 10. We talked about the God release. We talked about Apollo and his aspect. We talked about the new items. Let's talk about all the other items that are going to be getting some changes, and then God balance as well. So
let's do it.
Up here at the very top, let's talk about anti-heal up first. Kind of not necessarily sweeping changes, but anti-heal is a stat that we're kind of not revisiting, but we're looking at a little bit closer in this update. Talk to me about what we're doing with anti-heal.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like, every time we brought in here in the last couple patches, we've been talking about the item specialization pass and the big arc of work. Well, for the most part, and as Pon alluded to and talked about on Monday a little bit, that pass is for the most part finished. Like, we were very happy with the way things have turned out. Sure, there's a little bit of discussion on DPS versus tanks right now and where that's going to play out. We absolutely want to see how that settles a little bit. And now that the item specialization pass, in terms of the tanks, the penetration, and all those different items, and recent the foundation has, for the most part, completed. It's always an ongoing process, right? So I don't want to say it's completed because I'm sure we're going to revisit
never
something.
Done. Yeah.
But now we got to do some of the couple item changes, or even God changes, but in this case, item changes that we've said we've wanted to do for a while. One of those was always the anti-heal items. We've talked about how we've brought them in. They're kind of there for the base functionality. We had healing Ankh, and we wanted to make sure that we revisited the passive effects from Smite 1 and just what made them successful, what we can do for Smite 2. Yeah. And I would say, we probably aren't done here yet. This is just the next step for anti-heal items, and if we want to go further than this, we might. But this is where, kind of where we wanted them always to be.
Cool, sweet. Well, first up, Ruinous Ankh up first. We're going to be shifting the passive. Enemies within 4 meters have 40% reduced healing. The anti-heal effect is increased by up to 50% at close range and decreases as they get further away. So we've made this change to a couple of different items. It's really cool implementing this tech for Ruinous Ankh.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of those types of effects where, like, we've talked about how aura items, we don't dislike them. They're there, they're useful. Not every item needs to be so specific that it's just, where it's just a massive burden on casual players or just in players in general, because item store as a whole is always going to be very confusing. Yeah. The aura items, the problem with what they were previously is that without this kind of a range check or this other actual limitation, they were just too on or off. They're always good. They're always a balanced nightmare of, like, okay, well, especially with the void items when they're reducing protections, it's like, well, you're either really good or you're really bad, but allowing us to have this new level of like, okay, it's not that much more complicated. In fact, if anything, if you have one of these items, you're probably going to be playing into that enemy team a little bit. Sure, the ranged support and guardian utilizers may not be able to do that as much, but then that's okay. Then you go a different item, or you use this and try and change your playstyle a little bit more. So Ruinous Ankh is another opportunity where it's still got the double protections. We wanted to make sure that when we did this patch, we didn't bring just like Pestilence and Contagion back and have Ruinous Ankh and have 3 different types of a similar item. So that when we do bring in Contagions, we talked about earlier, and we can see again, it has a much more specific purpose. So Ruinous Ankh is the split protections. I'm just going to be good at anti-healing all the time pervasively.
Yeah. Sweet. All right. Divine Ruin up next. More for our intelligence-focused damage dealers. So going to be decreasing the intelligence just a little bit, but adding a new passive effect or an effect that may be familiar for those who played Smite 1. Enemy gods hit by your basic attacks or abilities have 50% reduced healing for 6 seconds and trigger a chain lightning, damaging the target and up to 4 nearby enemies.
Smite 1 players may see this come back. I saw also a quick question from chat. For Ruinous Ankh and for the other items that have that, what you see there is the mid-range, so 40% reduced healing is what you get at like the medium range. And that goes to 20% at long range and 60% at close range. So that's how the percentages work there. But for Divine Ruin, so another note there is it might seem weird that we just increase the power for intelligence and strength on Divine Ruin and Brawlers just to decrease them again. But that's because when we wanted to do the sweeping pass, we knew this was coming. We didn't know exactly that this was going to be the patch afterwards, but you know, this was the goals. We didn't want them to be one stat lines with just power, and that's basically in the tiny anti-heal effect. This is just resetting their power again to where we'd expect them to be with the added efficiency of a new bonus effect. So Divine Ruin there, we've got the Chain Lightning from Smite 1, and some people might ask, like, why bring certain things back from Smite 1 and do new things for Smite 2? Well, for us, that's always the question of just like, we found this item effect to be interesting. It's also another way to add splash damage in to a mage's kit, or to an ability user's kit, and also, as with Smite 1, the bouncing damage will also apply that anti-heal, so you're actually getting that a little bit of an extra spread to it too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, up next, Brawler's Ruin, going to be the strength-focused anti-heal item for those ability users and damage dealers. Added a new passive effect. Enemy gods hit by your basic attacks or abilities have 50% reduced healing for 6 seconds. Item anti-heal effect stacks to a cap of 75%, and then getting a kill or an assist on an enemy god creates a field around you that lasts for 6 seconds, providing allies within it 5+1 per level strength and intelligence.
Yes, so this is another one that's, I kind of gave the preface to what we're doing with Smite 1 items into Smite 2. This is actually, you can see, it's a very similar effect to what it was in Smite 1, but we didn't quite like the way the Smite 1 Brawler's Ruin effect worked, where it just placed the deployable. It was just too often where people just leaving that field. It never really made it feel like there was actually anything impactful happening from moment to moment gameplay. Sure, there are opportunities where it could work, like in the Fire Giant Pit or something like that, but more often than not, it wasn't really working out. So we wanted to try attaching the deployable to the person that actually gets the effect. So this way, they can make plays. They'll always have the effect themselves, and allies that are nearby can opt in to trying to be close by as well, to kind of share in that benefit. It's not going to be easy. The range isn't the largest AoE in the world, but we're going to start with this, see how we feel, and see. I mean, the fact that the player getting the effect always has it on for that 6 seconds is always going to be useful anyways.
Yeah, that's super cool. All right, next up, we talked about a new anti-heal item, Contagion, but of course, the full stats for all those that missed the Monday show: 2150 gold, 400 health, 6 health regen. You target a location, causing enemy gods within it to be debuffed to 75% reduced healing. If an enemy uses an ability while afflicted by that debuff, your cooldowns are reduced by 0.25 seconds.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see how this one feels. So you can see that there's no pervasive passive anti-heal effects like some of the other items, but this one is a very purposeful. I'm doing this at the area, 45-second cooldown, which for our active items is pretty mid-range. We have some ones that are longer. But it's 75% reduced anti-healing, which for the most part is the highest outside of like the healing negation fields of like, you know, Odin or One Day when we bring Osiris or anything like that back. Another thing to note for those who are maybe keen-eyed is we did actually nerf the health from 500 to 400 based on our PTS play and our internal play tests since we revealed it last. So it did get a little bit of a hit there, because for 2150, that burst of health early is really good.
Oh yeah. All right. Other new items in the update that we talked about on Mondays. So we've got Erosion, which is another anti-shield option for those of you like Kilgoon who just hate those pesky shields that have been popping up. So you've now got Erosion as an option. And then we've got 3 kind of tank-focused items towards the late game to kind of let you splash these items into your build just based off of the type of damage that you're taking and how consistently you're taking it. So Dwarven Plate up first, 30 of each protection. The passive is you gain physical protections equal to 12.5% of your Fizz procs, and magical protections equal to 25% of your magical procs from items. But the active ability lets you swap these bonuses, which is really cool.
Yep. So Pon went on talked about these items before, but for if you weren't there, if you just want a small recap, Erosion there is that anti-shield item, similar to Smite 1 in its effects, but just the pervasive anti-shielding, a little bit different with the protections that you gain. Dwarven Plate is, as we talked about before, it's kind of that like Rod of Tahuti late game enabler. It's, it's pretty expensive. We're not expecting you to buy this first item, and it's also not going to be that good because it's a multiplier off of your other protections. So we're expecting you to see this, 4th, 5th, 6th item. And it's going to be something that the tankier items get, tankier characters get. Later on.
We got a special guest chat. Travis has joined us again.
I'm in your camera.
No, I hit the cameras. You're good. What's up, Travis?
Leave it here right now. I was just watching a few different chats, and something that was brought up, like maybe at the end of the show, we can, if we have time, because it's a long list, maybe touch on the +1s for Scylla and Ganesh.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
You want to?
That way, we don't have another opportunity to talk to the community about it before the flash test, so let's just hit them up with the spicy. You got it? Or do you want me to send?
No, I got the Scylla ones, but I didn't work directly.
You want me to send Ganesh?
Yeah, can you send me Ganesh's? Because I worked on Scylla. I did not work on Ganesh's.
All right.
All right, cool. We'll plan that for the back half of the show. Thanks, Travis.
All right. Travis coming
what
in.
A tight talk
as soon
today,
as he walked back in, he was like sneaking in from the door. I'm like, all right, this is going to be something
what's
spicy.
going on for Travis? All right, cool. Well, let's get through these balance changes, and then we can talk +1s, right?
Okay, cool. Gotcha. That threw me for a loop. Anyways, like I was talking about, Dwarven Plate. Yes, so that's the kind of a late game enabler for tankier characters. You want to be building into protections because this percentage only works from your protections from items. Freya's Tears versus Draconic Scale. So Freya's Tears is kind of the one that you want to pick up if you're getting bursted by the enemy, whether that's ability users, whatever it may be. You really want to get that protection from whoever's hitting you as quick as you can. Yeah. While Draconic Scale is kind of the constant ticking away. It applies on different instances of damage. And it keeps stacking on both for physical and for magical. So you're getting both of those stacks independently. They can both stack to 20 amount. And the stacks decay over time, which is something that we don't do too often. I think we've only used it like once before. Yeah. So while it says it's only 1.5 seconds, you're actually going to be gaining much more than that if you have many more stacks.
Nice. Cool.
So
So those are the other 4 new items. Lots of different options in there, but let's talk about just general item changes. Amanita Charm up first. We're going to be increasing the tick frequency, but decreasing the heal from 3.5% to 2%.
Yep, so a little bit of a buff there because it's going to actually net with a healing increase. And the fact that it's happening faster just means that you don't need to like stay in this field for as long if you kind of just want to dip your toes in and leave.
All right. Berserker Shield up next. We're going to be increasing the passive protections from items from 50 to 65%.
Yeah, Berserker Shield, we were looking both at its play rate and in the stats as well. And it was just under the point where we wanted it to be, and we wanted to make sure that we hit again kind of the protection synergy rather than just buffing its stats directly.
Yeah. All right, Eye of Providence up next. Just a base health
this
increase.
was just kind of like a reminder.
Yeah.
Yes,
this item exists.
We know that y'all don't want to buy wards, and it isn't the most exciting item, but regardless, it gives you free sentry wards and it gives you bonus gold.
Yeah.
Efficiency-wise, this is already probably over the point where we normally put things. It's a good item. You could almost just buy it for the stats themselves, and you'd probably be in a good spot. But that's okay. We'll give it some love. We're not going to break it. If we need to find a spicier effect one day, maybe we can do so. Yeah. But for now, just a little.
It's a reminder: this item exists. Buy wards, support, please,
buy wards. And not supports too. Yeah,
anybody.
That's where we gave free wards away, and now no one buys wards anymore.
Right. We've got people waving in through the window. Man, this is an exciting show. Hasten Fatalis up next. We're going to be making some changes here, increasing the cost, increasing the attack speed. We're increasing the max stacks from 3 to 4. Melee basic attacks now provide 2 stacks, while ranged basic attacks only provide 1 per hit.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a shift buff. We're increasing its cost, we're increasing its attack speed, just to let it be in a realm where it lives a little bit more efficient, lives in a world where you might want to, there was a debate before whether you want to sell this late game or anything it might be. Now it's, we want to cement in the fact that, like, if you get this in your build, you should feel pretty happy about it throughout the rest of your game. And the max stack, so we're actually increasing what it can give you by 1 stack, but we're making it even easier for melee characters because we find that the divide between melee and range kind of to be the break point. If this is too good for range too easily, then then that can get frustrating. But melee characters are the ones who should benefit from this the most, and we're okay with more investment that range characters get that full effect too.
All right, up next, Hussar's Wing, a little bit of a buff here. We're going to be decreasing the cost and increasing the health on the item.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at all the items, and after we've done the specialization pass, we're still happy with Hussar's Wings. Maybe we'll readdress it one day in the future, but for its cost for its efficiency just wasn't quite there. Now, 3,500 is the most expensive item in the game. It gives you a permanent immunity to slow, so it is a very good, if not
luxury,
the sexiest
premium,
of effects. But with that health to that gold cost, it should feel pretty good here.
Yeah. All right, Mystical Mail up next, and this is a pretty exciting change here. We have added a passive effect.
So I listed kind of both things. The first bullet point is what it does already. That's the change that we made previously. The second bullet point is kind of like leaning into the anti-shield components of what we wanted to do, like with erosion. Mystical Mail was just an opportunity for, like, you know what? We have this opportunity to kind of just split this to be a little bit more unique and kind of specialized in what it does. So not only is the range going to be, the damage component that is important, but now it's also there to constantly take away its shields, and it does the full close range damage to shields.
Regardless of the proximity to the person that has a shield, they're going to be taking that full amount of damage.
Yeah, that's right. So now between Shield Splitter, Mystical Mail, Erosion, there should be some level of anti-shield effects that we feel pretty good about. Do we want to increase that and add more over time? Possibly, but we don't want to just dump a whole bunch.
Yeah. All right, and then Pharaoh's Curse up next. We're going to be increasing the attack speed slow and decreasing the duration and decreasing the cooldown.
Yeah, a little bit more of a focus on this one too. Pharaoh's Curse never quite found its place. We wanted to make sure that people really felt it when it was applied. So the 40% attack speed slow, again, people have also been asking for kind of like anti-ADC or hunter options, anti-carry options. This is kind of one of them. The decreased cooldown will help facilitate that as well. You might be able to get too often a prolonged team fight. But we didn't want to give you 40% at 6 seconds duration. That's quite a long time, especially with the uptime changing with the cooldown. So now it should feel a lot more impactful when it's used.
Cool. And then last up for items, Spirit Robe, simple one, just 5 more prots of each.
Yeah, Spirit Robe is just kind of one that, we may have hit too hard with everything, or just when it fell down in the past, people just stopped picking it up as much. It does have that new effect with the healing after being hard CC'd, but it just kind of was just under the pointed balance, just a simple, healthy buff up here.
Cool. All right, let's move on to God Balance up next. That is it for items. Baron Samedi up first. Going to be seeing a buff. Wrap It Up, going to be decreasing the cooldown. And then Life of the Party, we're going to be increasing the slam damage and intelligence scaling.
Yeah, Baron Samedi. I'm sure there's not a lot of people who are upset with Baron Samedi buffs. He needed some love, and we want to find the right places for him. The slam damage isn't the easiest components to activate. And we also didn't want it to just do in the vortex, because that would just incentivize people kind of just flicking it and just trying to get that duration there. This is there for the final reward. It isn't too high in the late game base, but its scaling has obviously been increased. So you're going to feel this throughout the game with that early game base increase and the late game scaling increase. Just need to make sure that if you want that extra damage, that's actually going to be specialized for the mage builds, because it's on that scaling. But early game, everyone will kind of be getting the benefit. So if you do want to play Baron support, we're not like de-incentivizing that at all. In fact, the cooldown reduction with your 3 will help with that too.
Absolutely. All right, next up for gods, Kernanos going to be seeing a buff. Aspect of Strife, Horn Charge. The bonus cooldown reduction now applies when hitting jungle monsters at a reduced amount, so it's 2 seconds instead of 4 seconds per hit.
Yes.
And then base Horn Charge, increasing the damage.
A lot more horns for Kernanos, so
I know, right?
Yeah, he's going to be charging all around the place. We love to see all the crazy stuff that people did with Aspect of Strife and Kernanos. Love watching those, the content creators going crazy there.
Seeing all those resets, yeah.
Absolutely. But everyone said everyone wanted a little bit more, and this kind of helps pivot him that, not necessarily to force him to be a jungler, but if you're ever doing a jungle rotation, or if you do want him to put him into the jungle, this cooldown reduction will really help accelerate your wave clear. And we know that the base damage on his basic attacks, the heavy glaive increase, is already quite strong the way it is. So now not only is Aspect of Strife getting kind of buffed with the cooldown reduction, but it's benefiting from that base horn charge damage as well, which is only going to be affecting the early game.
Cool. All right, Hun Bat's up next, going to be seeing a buff. So Aspect of Disruption, the Overhand Smash, going to be increasing the damage. The passive Infused Strikes, we're going to be increasing the strength per stack. And then Somersault, the one, going to be increasing the damage. This also affects the second hit from this ability as well.
Yeah, so the monkey got a whole bunch of nerfs, when he was
he was real strong when he was released.
Shining too close to the sun. So the Aspect is significantly worse than the base, and that's fine. We understood the frustration there, but we're going to just tone a little bit of that back. So the base damage, we're not changing the stun or anything like that. It's just a little bit of damage that he lost for gaining this aspect.
Yes.
Is going to be brought back a little bit. And then his base kit as well, we're increasing that strength per stack. So that just means that if you play into the gameplay of weaving in those basic attacks into your abilities, you should be rewarded even more. So honestly, it's actually something that'll be more impactful the more you understand and play as Hunbots. For those who don't know, because I was looking at these myself and I don't play that much Hunbots, you get 1 stack per ability for every base attack used after an ability. So you really do want to be weaving those basic attacks in. If you're not doing that and you're spamming your abilities, you're not going to be benefiting from this passive nearly as much. So just keep that in mind. And then Somersault, just a little bit of an increase in damage. 10 may not seem like that much, but he also gets that second component if he does both hits of it. It's not going to be a whole bunch of damage, but we felt like it's a good spot for him to get a little bit bonus that wasn't going to feel too frustrating.
Yeah. All right, who is next up on the list? Loki.
Yeah, shout out to Sun Prodigy.
So Vanish, we're going to be increasing the damage over time scaling from 10% to 15% per tick.
Yeah, just a baby Loki buff. He needs it a little bit. He might need it a lot a bit, but like we're just giving him a little bit of love.
We're aware
here.
of Loki.
Yeah. He doesn't need to be at the average pace to be completely balanced. We understand how that can feel, especially for the burst assassin. So just a little bit of love there.
Yeah. All right, next up, Nuwa. We've gotten a lot of feedback that she hasn't been feeling the best, so she's going to be seeing a buff. Clay Soldiers, we're going to be increasing the dash damage intelligence scaling, and then Shining Metal, we're going to be increasing the explosion damage intelligence scaling.
Also, good note from someone in chat as well. Yes, the Loki buff specifically, we didn't choose it to specifically do this, but it does not affect the aspect. That is correct. We are going to let the aspect cook for a little bit longer. We are not against addressing any of the aspects that we think might not have hit the mark quite as well. But, one thing at a time. We've got a lot on our plates, and we want to make sure that, if we do revisit an aspect, we're happy with the next directions that we go with them. I wouldn't say that we're going to forget about Loki's aspect. It's just not right now on the, in front of us, our radar.
And then we were talking about Nuwa buff.
So Nuwa, absolutely. Nuwa needed some buffs. She, out of all the mages who got power increases due to their the itemization changes, or with the Signet and new items too, Nuwa just wasn't one that kind of climbed along with them. And we wanted to find some opportunities to help her out, mostly with her scaling. So the 3 Shining Metal explosion damage will definitely be the big kicker. 30 to 40% may not seem like a lot, or in general, the number 40% scaling for mage may not seem like a lot, but this is going to be in conjunction with the Shining Metal damage itself that you're likely going to be doing. And if anything, this number needs to be kept in mind, because it's doing the splash damage. If you're hitting at least 1 target with the Shining Metal plus the explosion, that's now climbing into a very high territory. So just keeping that in mind for Nuwa players. If you're not really finding a lot of success, you might not want to focus on the stun of the Shining Metal Clay Soldiers combo, but you might want to just focus on hitting them with the Shining Metal at least, because that's actually the majority of your damage. If you need the stun for CC, that's fine, but obviously both together is the ideal circumstance. And then Clay Soldiers, this is just that they do a little bit of a dash, and that does a little bit of intelligence scaling per soldier, so you're seeing a little bit there. It's doubling. The numbers here are doubling, so you're going to get 15% in general. That's not a lot, but I also didn't want to just take this value and 10x it, and people be like,
take it through the
what?
roof.
What? So this is actually kind of a knob that we're willing to tweak with a bit more and turn a little bit more. So let's see how people feel about that.
Yeah. All right, next up, Yamoja. Going to be seeing a buff here. So Mending Waters, going to be increasing the shield health and scaling. And then River's Rebuke, we're going to be decreasing the cooldown on that.
Yeah, some flashbacks for Yamoja for me, just looking at the stats and just seeing her right? But we understand that her skill ceiling and skill floor are higher than most other gods. And with that in mind, we don't, those types of gods probably can't live healthily at a 50% win rate, because the people who can make use of her well will just see extremely high strength with that. So Mending Waters, it's kind of a pivoted focus there for the shielding, because we have more anti-shield options now. So it's almost okay for us to increase the shields, and let that be the forefront. Let that be kind of what the character can bring, and that way it's almost not an expectation, but it's it's putting the ball in the other player's court to make sure that if they don't want to suffer these effects, they're building the right counterplay. So the shield's stronger, anti-shield as a whole is stronger. And not to mention, obviously, anti-heal effects are now getting slightly stronger too, but we didn't want to buff that directly. She's already got enough healing as is.
All right, Merlin up next. Clumsy. It's like you ordered these on just based off of who you've worked on. Merlin going to be seeing a shift here. There's a lot So Aspect of Pandemonium, the Elemental Mastery, which is the ultimate, going to be decreasing the intelligence buff scaling and increasing the cooldown. And then Eclipse, the 1A in Void Stance, going to be decreasing the cooldown. Radiate, the 2A, which is the fire stance, increasing the damage per tick. And then Dragonfire, going to be decreasing the cooldown, the fire 2.
Yes, so a Merlin shift here, because specifically, and you mentioned it. I was the
sorry. Radiate is Void Stance.
Yes. So Radiate Eclipse is Void Stance 1. Radiate is Fire Stance 1.
Yeah.
And then Dragonfire is Fire Stance 2. So Aspects on most levels is actually stronger than base Merlin. I find that to be very funny. Yes. I'm not against that in the slightest, but we're obviously we don't want Aspects to always be better or always be worse. That's kind of not the point. Like, Aspects are meant to be a shift. They're meant to be a trade-off.
Yeah. But
if one kind of falls or rises against the other, then that's when you kind of need to bring them in line a little bit. Merlin as a whole, including the Aspect, is actually all under the points of average. So, like, as a whole, Merlin did need a buff. So even though you're seeing a specific Aspect nerf here, even the aspected Merlin is still getting a buff with everything else. Not nearly as much of a buff, because that was specifically designed that way, because you're probably not going to be utilizing the cooldown buffs that you're seeing here with the aspect, because you're shifting off of them very often. So that being said, for those who don't know, Merlin's aspect gives you a buff after you utilize his ultimate for a medium-sized duration. That's going to be toned down a little bit. So you're not getting too strong every time you use your ultimate. Even just doing that and resetting your cooldowns is obviously quite good.
Yeah.
And then the cooldown itself is no longer going to be 15 seconds flat, but it's going to be 20 seconds flat. Still lower than Merlin's base ultimate cooldown, at least because that one scales per rank, but not to the point where it should feel too oppressive, especially in the early game where he's already getting a pretty high benefit. Yeah. Then for his base kit, because like I said, all of Merlin is technically underperforming. Decrease the cooldown of the 1A, let you throw those eclipses a little bit more often. Increase the damage per tick of the Radiate, and again, as I note there, this is the burn dot damage, not the ticking channel damage. And the reason why this bullet point is actually so important is because while it seems pretty light, obviously that's going to be per tick, and this is also the dot that you're applying in the different methods now. So this singular bullet point is buffing the damage that he does with his 1 in Fire Stance, his 2 when they're in the center in Fire Stance, which also applies his dot, the dot damage that he does with his in hands after he uses his Fire Flicker, as well as the dot that applies when he uses Elemental Mastery on both the explosion and the contraction. So this dot affects 4 different abilities, and in doing so also affects the aspect as well. And then a tiny Dragonfire cooldown decrease as well.
All right, Aladdin up next, going to be seeing a nerf, Kufik Invocation. Lots of bullet points here, so we're going to be increasing the cooldown, increasing the mana cost, decreasing the return small damage scaling, small, not the scaling, just the damage, and then decreasing the large return damage as well.
Yeah, so really focusing in on the 1, which felt like kind of over the point of balance there. Aladdin has been doing pretty good. Then we saw some nerfs kind of take place, and those kind of cemented him. Then we saw some shifts come up and help bring him up. But where Aladdin's flexibility really allows him to shine the highest, right? He's another god with a very high skill floor and another very, very high skill ceiling. But what we saw much more success in was his ability to poke from the jungle, but also even like playing Aladdin in mid lane. We saw a lot more prevalence of that. And what really allowed that to be the case is the low cooldown and the damage that's there from this ability. So toning that down a little bit.
Yeah. All right, Awilix up next, seeing a round of nerfs here, just about on every aspect of her kit. So
she's just doing. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to.
She's just doing really well. So
she's
Feather
just doing
Step,
really well.
Increasing the cooldown, Moonlight Charge, increasing the cooldown, and then Gravity Surge. We're going to be decreasing the base damage and the strength scaling.
Sorry, just chat trying to get Pon to sleep on a warm pillow. We don't.
Oh no,
that's it's already summertime,
right?
Yes, so Awilix did just need a round of nerfs. I think it's just simple as that. She was performing higher than we would like. Her ban rate and ranked was amongst the top.
Yeah.
And that's something that's data that we do obviously want to utilize as well. And I want to take this moment to just recognize that there's been a lot of discussion. I'm just like, hey, they keep talking about how they utilize stats a lot more. Nothing has really changed on that front. Maybe we're just talking about it a bit more, but we utilize, whether it's ban rate, pick data at different ranked levels, the popularity of these characters, as well as ambassador feedback, social media. That formula hasn't really changed all too much. We want to be as informed as we can in all game modes, all levels of play. Yep. Just getting that balance point correct for everyone at the same time is just a Herculean, if not impossible task. So we just wanted to sometimes preface be like, hey, in this case specifically, we're justifying this nerf by saying that her ban rate is quite high, and the data helps to alleviate that as just being like, hey, we're not just throwing darts at a board here. Right.
All right, next up on the list, Cabrakan going to be seeing a nerf to Refraction Shield, going to be decreasing the damage. This affects both the normal and enhanced versions of the ability.
Yeah, and this base damage nerf is specifically going to be hitting his early game, so you can see that it scales to the same amount. It's a pretty heavy early game nerf because it's 20 off, but then it's 20 off of 2 different abilities. Yeah, because you can utilize this twice. Cabrakan gained that as a buff, and we know that his bruiser potential, especially to early to mid game, can feel a little bit frustrating. That being said, we've also noticed that Cabrakan's mid to late game, once people can kind of deal with him, regardless of the item shifts that have happened, actually lead him to be healthier. So it's really his mid to late game that's quite balanced, while his early to mid game can feel kind of frustrating.
Yeah. All right. Next up, Hades doing really well. So he is also going to be seeing a nerf here. Devour Soul is going to be decreasing the heal, and then Pillar of Agony, the ultimate, we're going to be decreasing the protections gained while channeling.
Yeah, shout outs to all of you Soul Laners and Soul Lane content creators that have been waiting for a Hades nerf. This is for you. That's all. That's
it. No other context.
Nope. He's good.
Another god that has been doing really well. Sobeck going to be seeing some nerfs as well. Just some cooldown increases for Tail Whip and Sickening Strike.
Yeah, Sobeck's definitely one of those gods as well that at a high level still performs quite well. And I think I want to clarify on that because after all the tank changes, there's a lot of discussion on like, hey, how are tanks doing? And Sobeck was one that people still just said, no matter what, is just always good. Yeah. That being said, his stats are, just about fine. We really kind of see this to be more of a high level issue than it is just kind of pervasive for everyone. That being said, I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of people being like, what are you talking about? I'm not a high level player and Sobeck's really frustrating. Sure, and I believe you. And the stat and the data and now we're going to be nerfing him accordingly. Yeah. But it's not the heaviest of nerfs. If we need to nerf him more over time, that's fine. But he's definitely one of the ones where like he's in the thick of it, and the itemization changes will really show off what he can and cannot do.
Yeah. All right, up next, Soul going to be seeing a nerf, and I believe this is our last change, specifically around the aspect of conflagration. Is that how you say that word? I don't know. Nice. So Disapparate, we're going to be decreasing the damage and intelligence scaling on this for the aspect.
Yeah, she's just doing quite well, and with the mage changes, out of all of the ability users, she shot up the highest, I believe. So we wanted to hit specifically for the aspect because that's where the mage components of Soul rose the highest, was when she's using the aspect, and this is the only component really that is specific to the aspect. And we didn't really want to nerf the base kit, nor did we want to nerf the passive anymore because it's already honestly in a pretty safe space. You don't get the most amount of intelligence from item. You don't get that much more. I think it was like 6% ability damage. This was the kind of the overperformer.
Sweet. Well, that is a wrap for our OB10 balance overview. We'll have full patch notes posted on the website on Friday. I'll probably do the same thing that I always do after these shows, is I'll save this doc as a PDF and share it out on social media. Sweet. For those of you that missed the show or just want to review the changes one by one, create content around the notes and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
But that is all that we have for balance. Clumsy, I guess. Should we just talk about Scylla +1s?
Oh,
you forgot that quick,
God.
right?
Yeah, I did. I'm just like, we're good to go. We're going to be talking about questions.
Right.
I don't know if Travis even sent me the Ganesha ones.
Let's see.
We're not going into game, right? Because Josh poked us about something to do in game. I've got the Scylla ones nicely typed up in a doc. Just say the wildest stuff. Yeah.
Uh-oh. Oh, come on in, Travis. Come on in.
All right. You wrote it down? This is Dr. Scribbles? Which way do I
Old school. Thanks, Travis.
Oh, yeah. I remember that now. Oh, okay. Gotcha. Did you write a joke for me? Okay, we can start with Ganeshas, because I've got it right there in front of me. One sec. Let's hydrate for this.
Yes, hydrate.
Reminder for those in chat as well. Okay, Ganeshas. So Ganeshas, reading off the doc, but I do recall this now. So his first ability, don't remember all the names, so I apologize there, but his first ability now marks enemy gods. When an enemy is marked, any hard CC effect will consume that mark to deal damage to that target that scales with their level. So the idea here is the one applies a mark to enemies, and whether it's yourself or anyone else, it's kind of like a combo attack for proccing off of hard CC specifically. Yeah. And obviously Ganesha has some hard CC, so he can utilize and proc that himself. So kind of a little extra spice on the projectile ability that could use a little bit of love and extra. Yeah. So marks enemy gods, any hard CC will consume that mark to deal damage to that target that scales off of their level. The only other component as well is that Ganesha's third ability will now destroy player-made deployable walls. Something that we kind of always talked about doing in SMITE 1 but never really got the ability to, and now we're here on SMITE 2 or UE5, and it's always something that we wanted to do for Ganesha, and now we have the opportunity to. So he doesn't just go through walls himself, he will break down player-made, I believe, non-ultimate walls. So we're talking about, yes, not Yamoja ult, and I believe not Odin ult, but Thor walls, Ymir walls, Honor pillars, and the such. Specifically the kind of blocking walls.
Cool.
But not ultimates, no. I believe. Unless I'll go back to my desk.
Right, yeah.
How is he doing that? Okay, cool. And then joke, so maybe one less shell? What does that mean?
I don't know. Get Travis back in here. What was this joke?
It says it right here. with the joke in caps. Okay, cool. Oh, yes, there you go. One less phantom shell. Yeah, thank you. I was not thinking about it
We were missing the context.
Yeah. I get the context now because it's a sub-bullet point of the third ability. I was just thinking about Ganesha as a whole. Yes, one less phantom shell potentially because he can actually break down through those walls. Yeah, if anything, now that's got me more interested. Like, now, if anything, you can get, like, Staff of Merlin and just constantly be breaking walls if you're finding it frustrating, or just get more cooldown reduction. But yes, I see you. It's less of a joke and more just like a tip for players.
Yeah.
It's okay. I appreciate you, Travis. Thank you. I think it failed on delivery. Yeah, no, that's my bad. That's my bad. You didn't make a little smiley face with your
I know, right?
So.
Sweet. Well, was that it for Ganesh? We talked about the +1 to the 1 with the CC.
So I'm looking at my phone to make sure Scylla's ready.
We're waiting on extra messages. We talked about being able to destroy player-made walls. Yeah. He's still got that silence field. He's still got the
all
pillars.
The rest of the goodness. His ulti's working the same way. You can still lock people down on it with his 3. To make sure that they take just the burst of the initial hit damage as well as the repeating damage. Yeah. None of those components for Ganesha has changed at all. He's still gifting his allies with those kills. Yep. So he's feeling just as good, and if not better than ever. And we've talked about his +1s. We're not going to go into any aspects, but I'm not sure.
There are aspects in the works for them.
There are aspects in the work for Scylla and Ganesha, so we can confirm that now. But we're not going to tell you what they are. Let that be wait, no. Those will not be active. We'll need to
At this point, I don't know. I just found out about this today. You know?
Exactly. We'll figure that out. Okay.
Cool. All right. Are you ready for Scylla, or are you still waiting on...
No, I'm just making sure I have the list, because I just wrote it down in a nice little list earlier.
Nice. Cool.
So that way I don't miss anything. Okay, cool. So Scylla, super excited to see Scylla, and we're talking about
right?
We're talking about bringing in some of those fan favorite
one of
gods,
the most popular gods in SMITE 1 history.
I think she's like top 3 on my list as well, between like Merlin, Scylla, and Giannis. So I'm super excited to see Scylla in. She's been feeling better than ever. Her playtest, she might be maybe a little bit strong, but that's okay. We'll figure that out. Okay, so I wanted to, I made a note here as well for myself. Scylla has a few +1s. That being said, there's also a few shifts, and I don't mind talking about all of those right now, considering, like Travis said, if she's on this flash test, everyone's going to get that, and it's good to give a little bit of context. The shifts are super minor for the most part, so you will, we can talk about that together. So the passive, it involves one of the first shifts, which is the third ability, Sentinel, actually has passive mana regen on it. MP5 in SMITE 1 or mana regen for us in SMITE 2, that's actually going to be moved to the passive. So no longer are you going to be gaining increased mana regen from ranking up your third ability, but you're actually going to be getting it for getting max rank of your abilities, just as you would usually get the other components of this, which is you're still going to be getting 25 intelligence for max rank. So now you're getting 2 things when you're getting max rank in terms of stats for Scylla's passive. But you're also getting those bonus ability effects, and whether you want to call that our passive or the passive for abilities, that's, for us, that doesn't really change anything. But we can get into what some of those are. So the idea for Scylla is take this opportunity to just kind of hone in on what she does best. We want to really push her and make sure that she feels like that, a mid to late game powerhouse, while maybe her early game is a tiny bit weaker, and we'll see that in one of the other shifts as well. But also give him the chance to have a look at what her max rank ability effects do and see if we can find an opportunity there to spice things up a little bit. Because to be honest, Scylla's kind of a great kit. We're not trying to go crazy and
an iconic
plus
kit
one,
too.
an iconic kit. We don't want to add +1s that kind of detract away from who Scylla is. If anything, we want to hone in on that a little bit. So first ability, no changes. It's perfect. Its max rank is great too. We're very, very happy with the way it feels, the way it works, and the bonus effect you get from max rank is solid. The second ability, a couple of shifts here, not a lot, really just there is a component that I believe was probably added into SMITE 1 that, this is an opportunity for us to actually take away here, which is this ability no longer does the bonus damage to minion in jungle camps, and I already wrote down, that it gained at some point due to balance in SMITE 1. That was, in a time where we were at different goals. For Scylla, the goal here is to make sure that, by taking this away, we're kind of leaning into the fact that she shouldn't have the best wave clear early on. She shouldn't be able to pop this on the wave and just instantly clear by level 3. You are going to have slightly weaker wave clear and damage earlier on into the game, and she's actually gaining damage further too. So this kind of makes up and kind of a trade-off there. So you're no longer going to be getting that bonus damage to minions in jungle camps. And so that's one component of it. And then for the max rank component, she's no longer going to be gaining that 1 second lingering slow and prot shred that she would at max rank, which was the main benefit. She will still have the protection reduction. But now at max rank, if this ability is refired early, that deployable area will still linger on the field. So it is no longer kind of like a debuff that lingers, but it's the entire field that lingers. So if you do it early, the earlier you do it, the longer that duration is going to be, because if you do this at the last second refire, that deployable will have already timed out at that time. So you're getting more of a zoning benefit depending on when you want to refire this. You don't even need to think about it too much. That's kind of the point as well. As like I said, we don't want to take away from Scylla's gameplay. If anything, this just adds to it and adds kind of another mechanism. That being noted, I even have a note for myself and for ambassadors and for playtesters now. If the slowing effects and protection reduction effects of that field feel too strong, we have a lot of ways of making that itself weaker. But we wanted to give this +1 a chance. Cool. The third ability, again, a tiny bit of shifts here. This ability's vision will always go through line of sight, not just at max rank. And now there's actually a new effect, so +1 here. When Scylla teleports to the Sentinel, her next in-hand attack for a short duration will actually deal bonus damage. Nice. So she gets kind of like a mini Polynomicon proc after using the Sentinel teleport. This is actually something that was kind of a fun little add, and also allows you to utilize this max rank more actively than what you were doing before, and causes you to actually be aggressive with it. Yeah. So if I call it a teleport, it's technically a leap. Because it can be Awilix pulled and all that. That hasn't changed at all. That was just my nomenclature. Apologies there. So once after you leap with the ability, or after you use the ability, refire it. I think it's just when I say in the game when you refire it, you'll get that mini Polynomicon proc. And then max rank, because now the max rank things are changing from previously. If this bonus attack from the Sentinel that you gain from going to the Sentinel hits an enemy god, her ability cooldowns will all be lowered flat by 3 seconds. So you get a one-time cooldown reduction benefit if you're playing aggressive. Again, the lean in here to this +1 is it changes absolutely nothing on her defensive capabilities, but it's actually increasing her offensive capabilities or letting her to be more flexible there. So another kind of opportunity that we wanted to play around with that I talked about earlier, which is Scylla is very good offensively, but she's surprisingly good defensively as well. Between the Sentinel and between the movement speed, which I'm going to be talking about with her ultimate, she's very hard to catch if she wants to be maneuverable. For sure. And that's okay. We're not taking away those abilities. We're just taking away a little bit of how strong they can be and shifting away the priorities there. And then finally, the fourth ability, kind of just right along, and just preface this as well, she's no longer gaining the double movement speed at max rank. She's gaining that normal, I think, 35% movement speed as she would at all ranks. So now when she's at max rank, you can just use it and then just zoom away. 35% is, believe me, is still plenty enough. But now, so not just at max rank, but all the time, whenever Scylla uses the ultimate I'm a Monster to deal damage specifically to enemy gods, if she deals damage to enemy gods, she gets 1 stack. These are the current numbers. We can absolutely change these. But whenever she kills an enemy god, she gets 3 stacks per god with this ability only. So we're not with all abilities, but with I'm a Monster. So she gets stacks. And this will be reflective in the passive meter. At max rank, which is going to basically be happening at the end of the game, each stack will add bonus damage and bonus damage scaling to I'm a Monster specifically. Nice. So the more you utilize it well, the better and better and better it's going to get throughout the entire game.
If you're hitting those ultimates before level 20, you get those stacks and they stay.
Exactly.
And that way you get a benefit once you hit 20 for the extra damage. That's really cool.
So something that like it's really incentivizing you to utilize these well, and really cementing on that fact that we said earlier where she's going to be a mid to late game powerhouse, and the longer the game goes on,
she's going to be dealing some damage. Yeah,
exactly. So a lot of cool +1s and like shifts to Scylla there. If anything, like I said, I wouldn't be too scared with like the bullet point list. Ganesha didn't need as many, and he doesn't. We were very happy with theirs. Scylla doesn't need them as much, but like we wanted to use this opportunity to just hone in on what she can do and what she is, and hopefully, if anything, this should all feel like more excitement for Scylla.
Yeah.
Like I said, Scylla's one of my top favorite gods. I think. She's a lot of fun to play in SMITE 1, and hopefully will continue to do so in SMITE 2.
I know a lot of the community has been waiting for Scylla in SMITE 2, so it's super exciting that they'll get an early look at some point this week, which is super cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Sweet. Well, I think, Clumsy, anything else for Scylla and Ganesh +1s that we wanted to talk about? We got about 10 minutes left in the show. We can do a short little Q&A segment if you want. Hang out for a little bit.
Sure.
Sweet.
Sounds good.
All right, Chad, I know we talked about a lot today. I know today's show was kind of a little bit chaotic, but in a good way. So just open up the floor for questions if anybody has anything that they want to talk about. No flash test today. No, there will be a flash test today just with OB10 stuff. Nothing past OB10. So no Scylla, no Ganesh today, but Apollo Aspect, the 5 new items, and all the balance that we talked about today will be in the flash test for today, hopefully right after the show. Double check.
Yes, that's true. Chaos Travis did indeed say that it's not going to be the H god next for the next SMITE 2 god. It is going to be someone without the letter H.
Yes, another letter is what he said.
And we didn't want to confirm which. That's for sure. How goes the secret SMITE card development? SMITE card. It's cruising along.
Yeah,
cruise controlling along.
Question from Typical Sin. For Scylla's ultimate, is there a max on stack count, or is it?
Currently, there's not. Feel free to break it. It's not the most crazy. I'll be honest. It's not the most crazy numbers right now.
It's like how many ultimates you're gonna get off throughout the course of the match. How many are you gonna hit?
I'm currently at the point where I'm keeping a track in playtests around to what people can do. I don't even know if the numbers are good enough to warrant the current stack amounts yet. I could see actually the stack count being fine, but the damage that each stack provides being low right now, or vice versa. I'm not sure. It just exists and it works, and we can balance accordingly before she goes live.
Let's see here.
Tell us about Scylla Aspect.
No. You'll just have to wait. Let us cook for a little bit.
Wait, what? Wait, what was this question? I just saw inbound and said no. You know what it is.
Yeah.
You're the ambassador channel. If you don't know what it is, that's your fault.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was worth a try. Oh, they're trying to bait us in there.
Lancelot? Not in my current blinders vicinity of like 3 months, that's for sure. So I would love to see him one day, but I just want to talk about it. That's fair. You're just trying to get us to go from like red light to green light now.
I see a lot of people in chat asking about the God announcements. They maybe missed the top of the show. So just to recap, we're focusing on classic gods from SMITE 1. The H god delayed for a little bit. Next 2 gods coming to SMITE 2 are going to be Scylla and Ganesh. The next all new god is not going to be the H god. It's going to be another god with another letter.
Yes.
And there'll be a lot of cool stuff alongside the all new god to make the update feel like a little bit more of a moment to build some more hype.
Yeah, exactly. And we will give more information about the other SMITE port gods eventually, but right now we're just focusing on Scylla and Ganesha. And no, I'm not going to tell you. What is that letter? No.
All right, Clumsy. I saw it on Reddit too. I saw it in chat. When is Mulan getting buffed?
Man, I feel like we can easily buff her. Oh, so I'm not going to get into the +1s and talk about that whole discussion. That's a whole different one. Yes, we can buff her. Sure, you can argue and say that she needs it from your point of view and perspective. From my point of view, and people in chat, I mean, some of you guys are here and know the developers do actually play this game. Yeah. Like, we're here grinding it out, whether it's in tournaments, whether it's in ranked, whether that's in normals, whether it's streaming it or not. Like, Mulan anecdotally is fine. Mulan at high levels is quite good statistically. Mulan's at all levels has generally been average. Sure, she can get a buff. It would go against mostly everything but casual perception, and that's okay. If that's what we do, balance off of perception as well, like I said. But I feel like I know that if we buffer more than like a bullet points, we're gonna just get the opposite part of people going, Mulan was fine. Why did you have to touch her?
Yeah.
But if sometimes we do that, and that's okay too. That's the constant flow of game development and games as a service. Like we like changing things up for the sake of changing things up, and I think that might be one of the things that people are kind of asking for. Is like, hey, we enjoy Mulan. Give us a little bit of a spice and reason to pick her up again. In fact, if anything, Mulan was one of the lessons I learned back when because I actually got the chance to work on her in SMITE 1. She released as one of my most balanced release gods of I think quite literally
50% win rate. I remember that. Yeah.
And the feedback I got almost instantly was, hey, balanced is cool and all, but it's a new god and we want them to be exciting, and I want a reason to be able to play them in ranked. But if I'm not going to play an average god in ranked, I'm going to play either a perceived or statistically better god in ranked, or in casual games, or in tournaments and stuff like that. So yes, I understand how that might feel, and maybe she just needs a buff for, just to feel it. But we want to be careful of doing that too.
We'll keep an eye out on Mulan. Trying to find a good question. Rank frames. I'll follow up with the UI team and Max after the show, and then maybe Friday, once we do our full patch notes reveal for OB10, we'll show off the rank frames. But that is a good call out and a good reminder. Thank you.
Scylla will be full int. She does not have hybrids or strength scaling outside of her basic attacks, as every god has. If I drive to Alpharetta and work for free, can we add disco to the game?
Oh my gosh.
That's not how that works.
Yes.
But if you want to come take care of my cat, then maybe I'll spend more time on it. Merlin's Void stance swap takes his own teammate's Magi's cloak. Now that's just funny.
That's a fun bug report.
I will hopefully remember. I have a paper, but
we don't have a pen.
It's fine. I will write it down in my brain and try and remember that.
Is there any reason why we haven't considered nerfing crit at the moment?
So first, Rage was obviously kind of like exacerbating that a little bit. We did decrease its efficiency based on the stacks flipperoonies, as it's known in the dev terminology. It's doing quite well. That being said, Hunters as a whole, and like the class kind of distribution right now, is like we said, we're healthy with the way the item store shake up and foundational reset has been. We don't want to immediately kind of shake one of the most used, because between crit and there's not really a pen path, but crit and on hit and ability really are the main three different paths you can go. We don't see that one to be overperforming to a point where it needs drastic changes. Does it need a little bit of a nerf here and there? Yes, probably. And we also want to take the opportunity when we can to look at some of the anti-crit items and how those feel. We know there's talks about spectral armor and what that could be, or even for when magical users go crit as well. That's another opportunity we want to look at, again, kind of like we did with the anti-heal items. It's another one that's in our purview. Crit and burst damage as a whole has always just been something, even in SMITE 1, it's like there's always a meta, right?
Right,
and like if there's ever a tank meta, you hear an outcry. If it's ever like a mage damage meta, it's an outcry because of burst damage, or the other one that you hear is crit. So like it's almost always like one of those three or four things. Crit is just one of those things that you feel very heavily, because once it's there and once it's online, you see the big number, you see the UI pop up. It takes 2 to 3 shots. When Scylla is eventually in the game, or another mage or Zeus, something in the game does a lot of burst damage, you feel like you're getting insta popped. Or when a tank is there that's absorbing a lot of things and causing games to go longer, you feel those things quite viscerally. Those are obviously, I'm not saying any of those need to be diminished in how players feel about them. It's just something we need to be careful of, because as soon as you instantly flip a switch, like, okay, then it'll just be like the new problem that's there. And was this ever a problem to begin with, or is the counterplay options not good enough? Like I said, spectral is one thing, but I said the wrong one last time, and I got memed for it, and I think it was Bobby's fault, but that's okay. Because I said the wrong name, but you knew what I meant. It's
right.
Nemean that does the reflection.
Yeah.
Right? There we go. I think I said Leviathan last time and got made fun of by you, Bobby. Yes, Nemean's there to kind of help a little bit with that. Or you can try Pharaoh's Curse to attack speed slow them, right? Like there are options around it, and there's a world where we kind of want to see people utilize the options that we're bringing forward into the game, but if things are too strong, we can absolutely address it. We just want to be careful. It's not a stray. I watched your review of it, and you made fun of me.
Let's see. Are the guide releases still going to follow one of each class from SMITE 1? I believe that is the plan, but as always, as shown on this show, things are subject to change. So I believe that is the plan, but it could change. Well, Clumsy, we're at 2 p.m.
Oh, yeah,
so
we're there.
It's time for one more question. Thank you, Clumsy. Let's go. So we're going to take just a couple more questions, one each, and then we'll get back to it, and then hopefully start our OB10 flash test right after the show.
Oh, nice. I feel like now there's just pressure of, like, looking for good ones. Good questions. Because I feel like I could just take the meme question, but that probably would be too easy.
Let's see. $5
to count this as one. All right, I'll hit you up on my PayPal.
I'll take this question, but it's probably going to default to you, Clumsy.
Okay.
Why do so many tank items have a ton of HP with so little protections? Tanks feel forced into stacking health. Also, pure tank items lack good CDR options.
Okay, so there's a couple things there. One, I think a lot of the prevalence on a lot of health has probably come up with like Gauntlet of Thebes coming in and getting the change from protections to health. That's why I want to take this opportunity with the 3 new items that they've just gamed to really show off protections and protections from items. I think once those are in and people start feeling the strength of those items with the protections that they can contribute, we hopefully shouldn't see that as much. Because we also want to be, that's why we kind of focused in some of the heavier protections on those items to see if we can utilize them as ways for tanks to build them, and tanks to build protections from items, which will then be utilized in the passives of those effects, and it not just being like the base protection that people get. So these items are one way of facilitating increasing protections for tanks, and if that's not good enough, we can always have a look at it too. But we've also just changed the way the protections is being affected against the whole penetration changes, and we want to make sure that there's still a counterplay between the penetration change items, the protection items, the new protection items, health, and Shin Size and Soul Reaver, and those types of items. So there's obviously like the counterplay and the balance there, and I think a lot of that is focused on the Gauntlet of Thebes being kind of the tipping of the scales. So hopefully we've kind of readjusted those scales with these 3 new items.
Sweet. All right, Clumsy, you got to pick one.
You're like, wait, I just pick one that like, do you plan to go more crazy with aspects, or have you done the most crazy that you can do? That's a really a tough one, because like there's a lot of different things that we can do with aspects, and we want to be very careful with how we approach them and how much we can add to these characters, or detract and take away or trade off these characters with aspects. Honestly, there's a kind of a shifting goalpost with aspects, and the main things we want to do is make sure that there's fun new ways to play these characters that don't completely take away at all, really, because it's meant to be a trade-off with the existing way you play these characters, whether that's in new roles or in new play styles. That is okay. We want to kind of hit both those separately. So if you're finding a character that has an aspect that causes them to play in a completely different role, awesome. If it's another aspect that plays in the same role but in a different play style, that's great too. Are there some aspects that feel like they have more intensity in their effects than others and affect more parts of their kits than others? Yeah, there absolutely is, because at the end of the day, we kind of just want to do things that are cool and fun. Yeah. And like the goal of like, them not taking away from the main character is one of the most important ones. And the fact, and we've said this all along, is we don't want them to be a constant dev cost that we add to every character that makes it harder and harder to do work for those characters indefinitely in the future. Because as much as that could be cool, that's just not sustainable, and that's just going to restrict what we can do forever onwards, right? And so by that I mean like we don't want to just rework a god and like echo fighter them in an aspect. That is absolutely not the goal. But we did things like making Kali ranged and letting Athena go to enemies and stuff. There's a lot of awesome stuff that we can do. I'm not saying we've reached the cap of where we can go with aspects, but we know there are thresholds and limits that we don't want to go past. And like I said earlier, are there aspects that don't even come close to that and need a little bit of love? Absolutely. But we're probably not going to like take an aspect or take a god and give them an aspect that gives them like 2 new abilities that are completely re-arted and do wild and wacky new things. Yeah. Like at that point, and as we've learned almost from reworks in Smite 1, it's almost better to save that for a new god.
True. Yeah. Sweet. Well, Clumsy, thanks so much for joining me for the show today. Shout outs to Travis for hopping on the show for a little bit and his special guest appearances with the notes and stuff like that and breaking the news about Scylla and Ganesh and then the flash test for them a little bit later this week. That is going to be it for our show today. Keep an eye out on our official social media channels and Discord for news about those flash tests for today and tomorrow. We will be back on Friday for the full patch notes overview for Open Beta 10, going over all the patch notes and stuff that are on the website. But until then, we will see you all on the battleground. Hope everyone has a great rest of the day. Peace.
Peace.